Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Drew and JC here again, bringing you another episode of The Watchers on the Watchers Digital Network. Uh, you know, a lot of times you guys know us as kind of those quirky dudes that talk to niche filmmakers and, Bigfoot believers and stuff. But, every once in a while we bring something important, something heavy. And we've been doing this for like 2 years. And the last time I had this much, I don't know if I want to say anxiety about an episode, was when we brought Andrew Ryan Profaci on, who was a cult survivor. Um, we are going to talk about some heavier stuff today, and from here, I'll kick it over to our guest, let her introduce herself, and talk briefly about her organization, and then we will do our best to navigate the conversation after.
Thank you. Sorry, I have a cat that just ran into the coffee bar. So if you hear some noise in the background, there's the cat. But yeah, thanks for having us on. So I'm from Lantern Rescue. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in the United States, but we work internationally in about 16 different countries to do human trafficking rescues. The way that we kind of set that up is to go in and work with local law enforcement, local prosecutors, judges, aftercare facilities, so that we are empowering the locals to do the rescues instead of just having the Westerners come in, take the pictures, get the glory, all that. We want to actually make sustainable change in these countries so that when we're not there, they're continuing to rescue individuals. So we do that through a mix of training and mentorship with local organizations and local law enforcement. So we usually work through a local NGO to help empower them as well and get them invested in the community, and then work with local law enforcement so they can actually do these raids, arrests of the traffickers, and the rescues of the victims. So that's kind of the model that we have. We've rescued over 2,500 individuals since we were founded officially in 2020, but the starting of it was kind of in 2019. Not a great time to be starting an international nonprofit. So that was a little bit chaotic in the beginning. Trying to travel in 2020 was a lot.
Right.
But yeah, so
I'm sorry. How many did you say you rescued
over 2,500.
in a little under 5 years?
Yeah. Going on
That's
six.
that's wild. I mean, in a good way, that's wild, and in a
Yeah, and
bad
there's
way that there's that many people that need rescue. But
right. I was just gonna say is there's so many more out there that need rescued. I mean, the amount you'll see varying statistics for how many people are in human trafficking because no one's really self-reporting. So it's all estimates, right? But somewhere between 27 to 41 million are the most common statistics you'll see on people that are being trafficked today. So we still have a long way to go. There's a lot of other organizations that do similar work. So you can never really have too many people doing this work because it's such a great magnitude of individuals that are being trafficked. But yeah, that's kind of what we do. I personally, I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years as a Russian cryptologic linguist, had a great career there. And I went to law school afterwards, became an attorney, and I practice in prosecution. So that helps with the training of the prosecutors, like I mentioned earlier, internationally. So that's a benefit to us. And I focus on human trafficking and child pornography crimes for prosecution. But that's kind of the organization in a nutshell.
Yeah, so was your experience in the Marine Corps what kind of brought this topic to the forefront to you, or was how did you decide that this was kind of the mantle for you to take up?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I am one of the founders. I don't know if I mentioned that. I'm the current president, and I'm one of the co-founders. It was myself and one other individual that started the organization. So kind of to go back before the Marine Corps, even when I was in my undergraduate studies, I had a professor that was super passionate about human trafficking, and she just kind of weaved human trafficking into other courses. At that time, that college did not have a human trafficking specific class. They do now, that I actually get to go guest lecture at about once or twice a year, which is really cool. But she would weave human trafficking into it, and I just hyper fixated on it pretty young. So while I was in my undergraduate studies, I was involved more from awareness raising, buy a t-shirt here and there, talk about human trafficking kind of side of the house. Then I joined the Marine Corps after I graduated with my bachelor's. While I was in the Marine Corps, I did some graduate studies that specifically focused on human trafficking then. So more of the scholarly side of human trafficking, as well as, yes, develop some skills in the Marine Corps to just be less of a pain to travel internationally with, just more able to do work internationally. And during that time, just the passion for human trafficking continued to develop. I got out of the Marine Corps and was able to do some volunteer work with other organizations. They didn't really have the model that I thought was sustainable, which is kind of what I talked about earlier, is building up the locals and really empowering them to be the ones doing this. I still do believe that's the best model, is always to have the local individuals rescuing other local individuals, not the Westerners coming in to get the glory. So myself and at the time, the other co-founder, we just kind of started doing the work with what money we had. We just wanted to help. We never really intended to start a nonprofit, but that incidentally ended up happening. We would share kind of the work that we were doing. People wanted to donate, creates a 501c3 dilemma. And that's kind of how we became a nonprofit. Was almost an accident and it took off. So we're really proud of where it's at right now. It's grown way more than I ever expected in a short amount of time. So yeah, that's kind of how we got here.
What have you done within our country that has been effective in growing your message? Like what methods have you taken on?
Yeah, so I do prosecution. So I am a pro bono prosecutor. I don't charge at all for any prosecutorial services that I do here in the United States, and I focus on crimes of human trafficking and CSAM. CSAM is the new word for child pornography. So there's that side of things, as well as we do train local law enforcement here in the United States as well. We do human trafficking seminars, assist and mentor them through human trafficking cases when they have ones that come up. Try to help get victims into aftercare facilities when we are able to be part of that, as well as we're currently working on a new um, kind of incentive with the prison system. There's a lot of women that have been trafficked. They're within the prison system. They've been arrested for some type of crime related to their trafficking, whether they had drugs on them or they had a weapon on them to protect themselves from their trafficker, or they were arrested for prostitution or something to that effect. There's a lot of women within the prison system that have been trafficked that don't even realize they are victims of human trafficking, because there's a lot of misconceptions around what human trafficking actually looks like. So lately we've been working within the prison systems to try to combat that and then provide them services so that when they are released, they are less at risk to become a re-victim of human trafficking, so they can actually start their lives, get some counseling and get some services there. So there's a lot that can be done. We do a lot of speaking at colleges. We do a lot of speaking at churches, at community events, to spread the truth and the realities about human trafficking so that people actually know what to look for. And those seminars have helped to get tips out there that have allowed for officers to actually go and investigate the crimes and arrest traffickers and rescue victims. So it's been really beneficial. The states here in America, the strategies that we use are a little bit different. Obviously, there's different laws everywhere in the world. Every country is different, realistically. But here in the States, there's a lot of awareness and a lot of changing of that narrative around human trafficking, because a lot of people still see it as, a little girl being kidnapped in a Target parking lot. And they'll be very like specific on that definition and unwilling to kind of look elsewhere. So when people have such a rigid understanding of human trafficking, it creates a problem for other victims out there to be unseen, because it's not who you're looking for, right? You're looking for the blue square and there's a red triangle, and you don't understand that they're both, shapes and they both matter, if that makes sense. So that's some of the misconceptions that we try to combat so that people can actually get the services that they need.
I have three
Right. Yeah.
questions.
Oh.
Go ahead.
They're not very long questions, and I'm hoping I can remember them all here. So my
You're good.
first one is we're talking about CSAM. There
Yes.
are a suite of apps, and they're Telegram, Teleguard, Signal, Sessions, even iMessage on the iPhone are all encrypted communication applications. And there are some, if you're familiar with like some of the pred poachers that are on YouTube, some of the
Yes.
channels that got popular for that. A lot of them take the stance that they want to take down these encrypted applications. Um, I personally have issue with that because there should always be encryption on our visiting, but I do kind of get their point that these platforms are being exploited um, for some pretty bad things. And I would say the majority of communication on these apps is not um, illegal in any way, but there's always that small percentage. What is your opinion on that?
So I understand where they're coming from. However, asterisk, CSAM investigations began with the United States Postal Service. So to kind of go back historically, before we had the internet, individuals were mailing each other discs and like literal packets of printed out pictures of CSAM, and then it was CD discs and floppy disks and whatever. So we didn't shut down the Postal Service. You know, we can't you can't shut down freedom of speech or a way to transmit a message because there's illegal things going on. If that were the case, every single way we communicate would be shut down because allow a communication platform to be up for more than 10 minutes and someone's going to do something stupid with it, right? So I don't think that's the solution. The solution isn't to halt communication because we're not, yes, in a sense, there would be less victimization because people are less able to communicate in encryption. However, they will find other ways. They'll start mailing it again. That's not actually solving the problem. It's just going to replace it with, okay, well, this app doesn't work. So now we're going to move to this one and we'll just change the way that we're communicating. Because while there's, yes, the encrypted ones, and I've seen the group chats and I've seen all the pedophile stuff that goes on there, not all of it, but enough. There's also unencrypted stuff on the open web, like Russian-based servers, .ru sites that don't have the same conditions that American servers do, and they're able to have CSAM just on the open web. Like you can just get on there and see it openly. So encryption or not encryption is not going to completely solve the problem. It's a bigger societal problem, and it's a bigger issue than just how people communicate. Like we're not actually, if you just halt their communication, they still are pedophiles. They still are going to be looking for children. They're still, maybe they'll just go out in the community and actually harm a child. That's not going to stop someone from being a predator by just shutting down a form of their communication. What actually needs to happen is to the societal change to have people not being predators, as well as protecting the children. But shutting down a communication platform isn't, yeah, you might see a decrease temporarily until they find out something new to go on to. They create a new app, they are on the dark web, whatever it is, it's not going to actually sustainably change that problem.
Yeah. Second question: have you ever heard of Run Against Traffic?
I have not, no.
So they are a nonprofit that features uh, Tommy Green from the band Holy Name,
Okay,
and they do a lot of like the aftercare recovery support and stuff like that. So just something I thought I'd throw out there because I know they're always
awesome.
looking for like collab in that. And
That'd be
then I
great.
guess so. My third question is, I'm not sure if I forgot it or if I just restated it in my head. Maybe it's not a question, but I live in Ohio, and Ohio is like one of the top, if not the highest states for human trafficking um, in the United States, just because like everything passes through here. So, I know the Midwest just as a whole is like very high for human trafficking. Are there certain areas you concentrate on more, or is it just
So
kind of general?
Yeah, it's really who wants us, like who requests us, and who's willing to put in the work, right? Because a lot of departments are willing to accept training, but are they also willing to? Because training's fun, like training's cool. I guess you got to work for a couple days. You get free coffee. That's cool. But it's the departments that are willing to accept the training and actually do something with it and report back on it. That is where we go. With the transiting. I'm very familiar with the Midwest. I lived in Illinois. I currently live in Pennsylvania, so I've been through across Ohio several times. Yeah, so it's difficult to really put into statistics where the trafficking is the worst in the United States, because most victims, a lot of victims, I wouldn't say there's a great majority on either side. A lot of victims are trafficked within their own communities. So they actually don't travel anywhere to be trafficked. A lot of them are trafficked by family members within their own homes, their own bedrooms. There are some that are moved across state lines. That's common in some cases and in some different forms of trafficking. But a lot of especially juvenile sex trafficking victims are trafficked within 10 miles within their own home. Um, so it's difficult to really put. I live in a very small town. And we even have trafficking here. There's trafficking everywhere in the state, so everywhere needs that support. Some places are more equipped to handle it, like New York City. NYPD has a trafficking department, a division, versus your smaller departments are going to have no one that has probably even heard of trafficking before. So it also depends on where our impact is going to be the greatest. Are we training a department that's already well situated and already handling the problem, or are we training a department that's never heard of this and they are like, this is completely revolutionary to them and they are going to actually be able to make impact in their community? So it's kind of a balancing act. Is who requests us, who actually needs the training, who's gonna do it, and do their rescues. So
You brought up Pennsylvania and that you live in a small town. I also live in a small town in Pennsylvania. So before I jump into any of the other questions, the one thing that kind of immediately popped into my head, what is Pennsylvania doing specifically to combat this issue? And what could other Pennsylvanians do to help?
that is a great question. So I didn't actually anticipate this question, but some of the legislature that I work with the House of Representatives, specifically Representative Owlett quite a bit. And him and a lot of the other representatives in the House right now are very invested in human trafficking. Last September, I can't believe it's already been a year. Last September, I testified in front of the House of Representatives about human trafficking, specifically in Pennsylvania, and human trafficking in rural areas in Pennsylvania and what that looks like. I think that's still up. I might be able to send you guys a link to it. It's up somewhere. I had not slept for like 3 days, so if I look like a zombie in that testimony, I was. But the House of Representatives has been very passionate about this, and they've been doing a lot of work, which is hard to see the actual impact, right? When legislation changes or there's stuff happening on Capitol Hill, it's very difficult to see that ripple effect immediately within society. But I say that to say that your politicians do care. Look up what your local politician is doing. I'm happy to meet with them if anyone wants to send them my way. If they're with the House of Representatives and they want to chat with Representative Owlett, he's always got a good link to me. So they're doing that. A bill that they recently are introducing that is something that I brought up to them is, this is kind of a complicated topic, so I'll try to like wave tops it. But when it comes to CSAM, so again, child pornography, the new word is child sexual abuse material. We have been seeing a lot of incidents of incest in those images, and you can assume there's incest, but that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about is actual videos that are advertised, videos and images that are advertised and or have caption bars going across them dictating the relationship between the individuals you're seeing. Again, this is children being sexually abused by family members. So we've been seeing that more lately. Something I brought up to the House of Representatives is that we don't have a sentencing enhancement in the criminal code for incest images and videos of CSAM. So what that means is you have a CSAM video or image of a child. If it depicts incest, the theory is, and the hope is, if this bill passes, that it will be punished even greater than an image that is, maybe just the child alone or something to that effect. There's already sentencing enhancements for other types of things, such as like abuse that's shown in the images, if there's bondage shown of the children. So enhancements with CSAM is not a new revolutionary topic on its own. The one that we're trying to introduce is specifically for incest. And the reason we think that's important is these children are already being abused. They have nowhere to go, and they even have nowhere further to go because it's their family members that are abusing them. It is taking a level of trauma, which CSAM is trauma 100% of the time, and elevating that level to the most trusted people around them are the ones doing this to them. So that's something the House of Representatives is working on. In Pennsylvania in general, for the average person, again, see what your local politicians are doing. Talk to them, talk to your mayors, talk to your local police departments, and see if they are doing any work in trafficking. If they need training, we're happy to provide it. But always just getting yourself educated personally on human trafficking and knowing what it actually looks like so that you can share that with other individuals in your circle that maybe then see something and are able to report that up and get someone help. So, and that's kind of consistent across everywhere in the United States. Politically, I just happen to know a little bit more about Pennsylvania because I'm involved with it. But yeah, I hope that answered that question.
The sentencing bill is HB 1835, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, and that was introduced by Representative Clint Owlett from House District 68. So if anybody wants to go and look that up, it's HB 1835.
1835. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah. So, and that will take some time to get all the way through, and I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it won't. I don't imagine anyone really voting against that, but it'll take a little bit before it's all the way through. But it's definitely something to support if you're, passionate about this.
So
yeah, for
speaking
sure.
of politics, have you ever run or considered running for a political position?
No. No, I've never run for anything. The thought of running makes me sweat. No, I have not really thought about it. It has been more recently tossed around in my general direction, and it still makes me sweat. So I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet. Nor do I know if I ever will be. But as a nonprofit ourselves, we have to stay away from, like, there's this interesting balance with nonprofits and politics of how much you can actually participate in supporting political things. It can't be so much percentage of what you do, which for us it's way under. It's something that we do very minimally. But I do believe that there's a lot that can be done within the political realm to benefit trafficking, and a lot has actually been done. A lot of stuff kind of goes unnoticed. The human trafficking laws here in Pennsylvania and generally across the United States are actually quite good. A lot of people, the criminal codes for them, a lot of people I don't think really realize that. The sentences can be extreme for both human trafficking and CSAM. Some of the recent sentences from the county that I'm in for CSAM are 20 to 40 years, 25 to 50 years, 50 to 100 years for CSAM possession. So there is a lot that can be done in the political realm to punish. Now, the prevention aspect is a little more difficult. And that's something that we try to work on as an organization, getting into schools and talking to kids pretty young, which has had a benefit. But yeah, politics can actually do quite a bit when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's up to us to constantly kind of be on our politicians to do that. So if anybody is listening or watching, like that's almost a responsibility that the voters need to take onto their shoulders just to make sure, as we're seeing nationally with what's going on with the Epstein garbage. But I have a plethora of questions I have written on my children's orange paper here, and taking notes as we go. But before we kind of move off from trying to be buzzwordy so YouTube doesn't flag us. But for like the children's portion of what we're talking about, right? So I'm a father. I have 4 kids. They are like every other kid with a device. I monitor it the best that I can, and they play Roblox. And Roblox is a terribly worrisome thing for a parent. I don't know how familiar you are with it from the work that you do. But I know from kind of my own, parental guidance and some of our pastimes and how we both, JC and I, watch and support pred catchers. Roblox is constantly kind of under
Mhm.
fire for this, because it's one, completely user generated, and two, a lot of these people that are involved with kind of this underground CP stuff is um, it's on Roblox now, and a lot of the currency that they're using to trade to each other for the materials
Mhm.
are Robux. You know, like they're paying for this stuff with Robux. So I was curious how familiar you were with that situation, and if you had run into anything at all.
Yeah, so when it comes to like, so kind of what you're getting into a little bit is self-produced content. So when predators are meeting young individuals on those apps, they are creating relationships with them. They are, convincing them that they're a friend, whatever that situation looks like. And eventually it gets to the point where they're having the children self-produce content. So we do experience that and we see that a lot. And Roblox, kind of hit or miss. Instagram is huge for that. There's some like chats like you were talking about earlier with like Signal and other streaming platforms that have that. So what we see a lot of children self-producing and the trading of Robux and anything of value that can create. So CSAM and human trafficking are technically two different crimes. In a lot of cases, I believe personally that CSAM does fall under human trafficking for a lot of reasons. But specifically when there is something of value exchange. So with what you're talking about with a child self-producing and getting Robux for creating images to send to an adult. That's trafficking. That is paying for a sexual service of a minor child. Right. So that is trafficking. We do see that. And I don't know if like a follow-on question there was like, how do we keep kids safe from that? Or if that's something that you want me to talk about. But there's this kind of goes back to the conversation earlier. There's no amount of parental blocks that you're going to put on your kids' devices that's going to protect them. It's just not. I have a 15-year-old. Well, I have stepchildren. I have a 15-year-old. She's going to be 16 really soon, and a 12-year-old. And they both have cell phones. The 12-year-old is very new. He really recently got that. Neither of them have any parental blocks on their phones. Which sounds insane for the line of work that I'm in, but they don't. So they don't have anything on their phones that will prevent them from going anywhere. I get that sounds crazy, and that's not necessarily the situation that every parent can have. The reason that we've chosen to do that in our family is a lot of these issues because we see the cases of stuff like something happened on Roblox. The child eventually gets an icky feeling and knows that it's wrong. Maybe even they were told by their parents to stay off of Roblox, and Roblox. It's really difficult. If they were told to stay off Roblox or whatever, they didn't. Now they've sent these images to this person, images, videos, whatever it is, to this person. Now this person's threatening them, they're blackmailing them, and it turns into a sextortion case, which there's a lot of studies that are being done on sextortion, and there's a lot of sextortion happening across the United States and across the world, really. There's even a great documentary called Sextortion about this, which is, these videos and images are exchanged. Now this predator has something on this child, threatens to send it to the school, then send it to their parents, whatever it is, to get them to create more images. And the child is very afraid to go to their parents and tell them, hey, this is happening. This is bad. This is how I'm feeling about it, because they were already told to stay off Roblox. So they're already in a place they're not supposed to be. They're already in trouble in a sense. They're kids, so they're not able to really form, we can kind of balance here, like bad being on Roblox versus bad being exploited by a pedophile. Like clearly the pedophile is worse. Mom and dad are going to help. Kids don't have that processing capability, right? They just know, like maybe when we were younger, you're in a field somewhere that you weren't being with people you weren't supposed to be with, drinking alcohol you weren't supposed to be drinking, and you don't want to call your parents, right? You're already somewhere you're not supposed to be. You're already doing something you're not supposed to be doing, and you're scared to call your parents. That's why we see a lot of like Facebook reels now, like call me anytime, that kind of stuff. That's kind of the same mentality we have around electronic devices in my house. Is we have a lot of conversations. Now, I say that my kids don't have parental blocks. They're also not allowed to have social media. Our youngest, or our oldest rather, she very recently got Instagram, and we're seeing how that goes. But it took years of us talking to her about the dangers of social media. If you have not gone up to someone and shaken their hand, or you could have, I know it's like 12-year-olds are not actually shaking each other's hands nowadays. It's not the 1940s, but if you have not interacted with someone to the point that you could have shaken their hand or been that close of proximity, there is no reason to add them on any social media platform, period. Like full stop. Because what we see and what we see a lot of with these cases is, oh, well, it's my friend's cousin who plays soccer 2 schools away, and we saw each other at a soccer game once. So I added him on Facebook. Why? What benefit does he bring to your life? What's the reason for talking to that individual? Well, we're just going to be friends. Are you ever going to hang out? Probably not. So we don't have blocks on the phones for that reason, because we want to have these ongoing conversations. There's no, like I said, there's no amount of blocks that's going to save kids. It's all about conversations and relationships. Again, everyone is entitled to their own parenting style. If you want to lock your phone down like Fort Knox, you do you. This is what works for our family. Because again, even if you have a block on and you have Instagram blocked and Snapchat blocked, we don't allow Snapchat in our house. We'll never allow it until they start paying their own phone bill for like 5,000 reasons. So there's things that we don't allow. I'm not saying that it's free reign on the phones and the kids are doing whatever they want, but we don't allow certain things, but we have conversations about them. Snapchat's not blocked on the phone, but if she were to download it, she knows that there would be a problem. The reason for that too is you can block Snapchat, you can block Instagram, you can block Facebook. They're going to come up with a new, at some point TikTok was new, right? There's always these new platforms. You can't block everything. You can't block everything into oblivion, as well as if you shelter your children too much from society, when they turn 18 and it's time for them to enter the world, they have no idea what to do. And you can still get exploited at 18, 19, 20, 21. We see elder abuse now of the Nigerian prince scams. Like you can be targeted and be the subject of a predator at any age. So building kids up younger and giving them confidence online and knowing good from bad, kind of like we used to with the predators, don't talk to strangers, don't get in the car with looking for the puppy or with the candy or whatever it was. We still have to be doing that in the digital realm, about what's okay to talk to people about. You don't need to be talking to people online that you don't know. There's truly no reason. Back when we were, not to guess anyone's age, but back when we were younger and we were in AOL chat rooms and people thought they had a boyfriend in California or a girlfriend in Australia, how many of those relationships did they actually, are they married today? So it's like all these like online friendships you had, MySpace or whatever, when we were kids, that like, how many of them are you really still talking to? And like, did any of those online relationships turn into anything? So it's just it's not real. Online's not real. And when we have these predators going on there and talking to children and they're great at, adding people that they know, so they get to know the child, oh, you play soccer at this school. They'll even pose as children. Oh, you're fighting with your parents. Tell me about it. They're very manipulative. So we can't block it away. What we can do is teach kids what real relationships look like and what communication looks like. So when bad things, and we do have, usually with our 12-year-old, he gets, and I don't know why, he gets like the spam text, like apply for this job. And he shows us like every single one. Our older child with, she's on social media now. So anything weird that happens with that, it's an open conversation with us. And she's never in trouble. She knows that if something were to go wrong and she were to be put in that situation, she can come to us and she is not going to be in trouble. So I'm kind of rambling, I feel like, a little bit, but when it comes to those online platforms that children are on, so Roblox, Snapchat, I'm telling you, everyone, like, please don't let your kids be on Snapchat. That's one that I'm very, like, I feel very passionate about. It is not a good idea. That's probably where I see the most exploitation is on Snapchat. Both ways. Like I see a lot of stuff exchanged between pedophiles on Snapchat, and I see a lot of children self-producing and being catfished by adults on Snapchat. Like it's bad. We can't block it away. What we can do is have conversations. Now, again, if you have a 4-year-old that has a tablet, yeah, probably block some things because they might accidentally click into some stuff. Like conversations aren't really going to work. We all know like the age threshold that's going to work for this, for your own personal children. So did that answer your question, or did I just ramble for like
No,
5 minutes?
it was very informative. I appreciated the answers.
I need to point out, this not that it's funny, but I had a family member I'm not going to name them, but they know who they are, that met a girl from Australia and without ever meeting her in person, moved, like uprooted his entire self and moved to Australia. He lasted 2 weeks
Yeah.
and came home.
I
But something, I got a hot take. I got a hot take here, and I think I'm
Sure.
going to get heat for saying this, not from you or from anyone, but maybe from some people who are constantly online. Pornography 100% affects trafficking in a negative
Yes.
way.
Yes. Correct. 100% agree with you on that. The Australia thing's funny. I personally love Australia. I try to go like once a year at least. I haven't gone this year. I'm very sad about it, but that's really funny. I did not know that, and I was not targeting that person. I swear he didn't tell me that story before this. Um, yes, pornography does fuel human trafficking and vice versa, right? So I also, this is not my organization's belief, this is my personal belief. I believe that there is a very direct correlation between pornography, especially when children, young males, see pornography very young. I think there's a very direct correlation between that and eventually becoming a predator in a sense, whether it is physical or they're looking at CSAM. Now, this isn't to say 100% of kids that see pornography very young turn into that. Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there is a very direct correlation between, because pornography is, there's an organization out there called Fight the New Drug. Pornography has been studied that the way it affects your brain is similar to a drug, right? So, and again, not everyone that drinks alcohol becomes an alcoholic. Not what I'm saying. Not everyone that views pornography is going to go down this road. But what we have seen from the few people that are willing to talk after they're arrested for child pornography and other crimes like that, um, a lot of them start viewing pornography very young, like 9, 10, 8 years old. They start viewing pornography. And right now I'm specifically talking about males. This doesn't mean it can't happen to females. It is more common with males. But I have seen female predators as well. So I'm not taking them off the table. So if I say he, it's not targeting anyone. Um, but we'll see young individuals start viewing pornography very, very young. And it starts off with your normal heterosexual vanilla situations, right? As they get older, you are altering your brain chemistry at a very young age. While it's still changing, it's still growing. The frontal lobe in males, what is it, 25 before they're fully developed? Maybe even older, 27 maybe.
I'm still
Your
waiting
brain
for my.
still to be determined. Um, you're still very very influential at that age. Your brain is still developing and you are basically injecting it with drugs. It's the same as if you started smoking weed at 8. You think you're only smoking weed at 21 if you started at 8? Probably not. You've probably moved on to heroin, fentanyl, meth, whatever. So with pornography, say a 9-year-old starts watching it, and that sounds crazy young. You'd be surprised. They start watching it, it's, kind of heterosexual, vanilla, whatever, for a while. Eventually, similar to drugs, that will not be enough. This is boring now. And they move on to, maybe there's bondage. That's not enough. Maybe they move on to bestiality, barely legal, incest. There's like a whole industry of legal incest posing porn where it's stepfather and stepdaughter that's barely legal, or she just turned 18 or whatever. Um, and we'll see the progression through their lives. And a lot of CSAM possessors also have on their device legal porn that includes bestiality and incest and all the things that I'm saying. They will have that mixed in with their CSAM. It's a thing. So we'll see this progression of children starting to watch pornography very young and how it alters. And eventually, not 100% of the time, but a lot of times you'll see them start to engage in CSAM. At some point, the legal stuff, the stuff they can find on the open web, on Pornhub, whatever's the current platform that's out there, isn't enough. And they will be seeking out CSAM. They will maybe even try to create their own CSAM. In a lot of cases, CSAM eventually, if you're looking at CSAM, and we've seen kids in their 20s, not kids, I mean, they're grown, they're adults at that point, individuals in their 20s looking at aggressive amounts of CSAM. That's very young. And eventually, again, the CSAM won't be enough. And again, their brain is going to say, we want more. And it'll turn into actually touching a child, actually trying to find a child that's being trafficked and sexually abusing that child. So again, this isn't to say this is 100% of cases, not saying that, but there is a very direct correlation between pornography, CSAM, and actual children being touched. Now, even in the legal pornography realm, when it's adults, you don't start looking at pornography until you're an adult. The way that pornography is portrayed is it's not a sweet, loving married couple that comes home and sleeps in separate beds and has very vanilla relations. Like, pornography is aggressive. Pornography is not realistic, in case anyone hasn't heard that. It's not real. And it creates, but it does, what it does is it creates unrealistic expectations in individuals. And it creates this culture around, because generally the women are not in control in pornography. Also shocking, I know. I have yet to see where there's like 8 women and 1 man. It's usually the other way around. So the women are generally not in control in pornography. It creates this unrealistic expectation in men that your wife and girlfriend are not going to fulfill. They don't want to. It's not going to be a thing. And it will create individuals, the desire in them, kind of similar to what I was saying earlier with eventually CSAM possessors probably are going to touch a child. Same thing where, well, my girlfriend doesn't want to do this. My wife doesn't want to do this. My whatever relationship it is. So they're going to go out and they're going to seek someone that will, which is a trafficking victim. And again, will is a very loose term here. They're being forced to. Just to be very clear about what that is. That's rape. That's trafficking is rape. Engaging in sexual relations with a trafficking victim is the same as rape. So yes, pornography definitely has an impact, a great impact on trafficking, on CSAM, on adult trafficking, child trafficking, all of it.
It is wild to me that rape porn is allowed to exist. Like,
Yep.
there's something so incredibly dysfunctional as a society that we've allowed this stuff to kind of take over. And like you said about being a drug, like, it doesn't end. Like, you start off watching something maybe soft, soft core, and then a couple years later you're watching people getting the shit beat out of them while having sex. Like, there's not like, oh, I just like this. It goes, you're either watching nothing or you're watching like the craziest, weirdest stuff that you can find.
Yeah.
on there.
And the
And it is an addiction. Like, people's lives get ruined, people's marriages and relationships are ruined, people lose their jobs because of porn. Like,
yeah,
it's bad.
the constant access that everybody just has at their fingertips now, it definitely makes that dopamine chase so much easier too. I think a lot of people will fall victim to that without even any effort or realization. But at the beginning of this conversation, you had mentioned, some misconceptions about trafficking and stuff, and I think this is a good point to segue kind of away from the CP related version of the conversation, because that, I think, is one of the misconceptions, is that when you hear so much about the trafficking industry, that a lot of people kind of tend to think, well, okay, so children are being kidnapped, they're being put in boxes that are shipped over to this cabal, and this evil politician is like drinking their blood. Like, there's so much crazy stuff that has been radicalized based off of these ideas. And so that one misconception that so much of it is just targeted towards children, but this is something that is going on with adults too. And in the news most recently, I mean, P. Diddy, right? That's a perfect example of somebody that's doing this right in front of your eyes, and doing it so well that he wasn't even convicted of it. He's being held for something else right now. So let's kind of maybe get into some of those misconceptions about adults who are being trafficked, and kind of highlight that.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of touch on some of the stuff you talked about there, like kids being kidnapped into trafficking, not impossible. Like, I'm not going to say it's 0% chance. However, when you think about trafficking, it is a business, which, just to boil it down, drugs are a business, crime is a business, trafficking is a business. It's not a legal business, but it is a business, right? So when you think about trafficking, and the reason that most, to kind of backstep a little bit, most victims of human trafficking, especially here in the United States, are not also victims of kidnapping. Most victims of trafficking, whether they're adults or children, know their trafficker, whether they're related to them, it's someone in the community, a friend, a spouse, whatever. It is very, very uncommon for victims to be kidnapped into trafficking. And the reason for that, whether it's an adult or a child, because adults can be kidnapped too, the reason for that is traffickers don't want to deal in stolen goods. They're already committing a crime. They're already selling humans. If there's a missing poster for that child or that adult, that is going to put even more pressure and even more of a risk on the trafficker. It's like someone, like, they don't want to sell a stolen car because it's reported as stolen. Someone's looking for it. When kids and adults are kidnapped, someone is looking for them. So rather than having that method, traffickers it's very uncommon for them to kidnap. What they actually do to get individuals into the trafficking world is a grooming process. Kind of also goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the Roblox and individuals talking on these apps, becoming friends or getting to know other people in their circle, whatever it is. It's the same with in-person trafficking. So with actual physical in-person trafficking, the kidnapping is very, very, very unlikely. I know always see the, like, someone almost kidnapped me in a Target, or tried to traffic me in a Target parking lot, and they left a candy can on my door handle or whatever it is. The very specific situation, which I always question, because did the trafficker, as he was running away, say like, "Oh, for you meddling kids, I would have trafficked you"? Like, how did we know that that was a trafficker? Anyways, so, but to backstep again. They're going to use a grooming process. So with trafficking, especially here in the United States, they're going to slowly over time work on their victims to get them to trust them, to isolate them from family and friends, to get them in their circle. And a lot of victims of trafficking are even trafficked within their own home. So there could be a teenager, an adult, someone that is going back to the same residence every single night. They might be being trafficked literally in that residence, or they're going to their trafficker, also another word for trafficker is pimp, going to that residence to be trafficked and returning home every night. So a lot of these people are not missing. And that's a very hard misconception to get the public around. Our jobs would be significantly easier if every trafficking victim in the world, all 27 million plus, depending on where you're at on that statistic level, if they all had a missing person poster and I knew I was looking for exactly this person, my job would be infinitely easier. It's not. Most victims of trafficking are groomed into the process. So they believe, and another reason traffickers like that is they don't see themselves as victims. They see that as their boyfriend. I chose this life. I just do this to help make rent, or I do this to pay whatever bill. It is. So they're not, even if a cop were to come up to them, they don't realize they're a victim. They're not going to self-disclose. They're not going to run into the arms. It's another misconception is as soon as they see a cop, they're going to run into their arms and thank you for saving me. And this is the best day of my life. Thank God. They don't know they're a victim. They think, and a lot of them are very protective of their traffickers, even into their prison stays. Like I was mentioning earlier with the prison project that we're working on, some of these women will be incarcerated for crimes that their trafficker committed, that they took the heat for, and they're still protecting their trafficker behind bars because they think it's their boyfriend, and they have to learn that difference, right? And that's a very hard conversation to have with an individual. Was generally, we know before they know that they were a victim of human trafficking, and to actually sit someone down and tell them you are a victim of human trafficking and explain to them what that looks like isn't a fun time. But traffickers don't self-identify as traffickers. Like, human traffickers are not out there. Some of them, there's like some pimp culture that there's like actual manuals on being a pimp. So they kind of self-identify as pimps, but no one's calling themselves a human trafficker. They're not. They help women who want to be in sex work or whatever they're going to spin their narrative to. But and we'll see a lot of victims in the States, a lot of them are adults. Like, this is not, like you mentioned, this is not just a child only crime. That is a huge misconception that it's just children that are kidnapped into trafficking and they're like held in basements and chains, or they're shipped to politicians or whatever it is. You could walk by a trafficking victim today at your local gas station while you're picking up a bag of chips and a soda and have no idea. They are out in the community, they're interacting. They generally don't know they're a victim of human trafficking, and their traffickers are not identifying as a trafficker. And that's the perfect business plan for them because they're not, again, they could walk in that same gas station right past a police officer and not ask for help because they don't know they're a victim. It's the perfect strategy for a trafficker. If it was a kidnapping victim, again, to go back to that, they know they're kidnapped. Like children know they've been kidnapped unless you were kidnapped at like birth. Um, if a 12-year-old, a 25-year-old, or whatever is kidnapped, they know they were kidnapped and they're going to go up to cop and be like, hey, I'm that missing person that you're looking for. So again, traffickers are very unlikely to kidnap. It's not a 0% chance, nothing is. Um, but they're very unlikely to kidnap into trafficking. A lot of victims in the States are adults, and that's consistent across the world. Human trafficking also isn't just sex trafficking. We have labor trafficking, forced servitude, involuntary bondage, forced marriage. Like there's um, human sacrifice, organ harvesting. There's so many different types of trafficking around the world. It is not just sex trafficking. Sex trafficking can be woven into a lot of those, and vice versa. But it's not just one size fits all trafficking around the world. And again, with the kidnapping, they don't want to be dealing in stolen goods. They want to have this perfect crime in a sense where the only evidence is the individual, and they've taught that individual to lie. It's not like a crime of drugs or guns where an illegal drug is going to test positive for fentanyl 100% of the time. It can't lie on a lab test. It is what it is. It's a drug. An illegal gun is what it is. A human can lie. So traffickers have created this really great, great, it's not actually great, but this, for them, great business model because they can continue to resell this individual. They can, you can sell illegal drugs once, you can sell an illegal gun once ish, unless you get it back, I guess. But a human you can sell 20, 30 times a night, right? So, and a human can lie for you. The evidence of the crime can lie. So it's another thing I want to point out too is there's a lot less, it feels like, from my perspective, a lot less sympathy for adult victims. Most adult victims are child victims that no one ever got to. And that's something to remember for people too, is most adult victims, the first time they were abused was not when they were an adult. It generally was when they were a child. Something probably happened. Not 100% of the time, again, nothing is 100%. Something probably happened as a child that has led to a point of vulnerability the trafficker was able to groom and exploit them. So a lot of adult victims are child victims that were never rescued. So that's something to think about too when people are, yes, child victims. It's horrible. It's very sad. I have kids. Like, I obviously don't want children to be trafficked, but adult victims are no less of victims because they're over the age of 18.
I wanted to just mention that a couple weeks ago I had stumbled upon organ harvesting in Africa, and it is
Yep.
a multi-billion dollar industry, and it's really bad in places like Egypt. Like it's known in Egypt that
Mhm.
there are people coming for your organs, and nobody there's nothing that they do about it.
Mhm.
They just let it exist. Um, It's crazy to think that that would happen here in the United States, but it does.
Oh, I was sorry to step on you. I was going to say, to piggyback off of that, like one of my next questions was like, geographically worldwide, like where are you seeing the most instances of this, trafficking problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's so everywhere in the world, kind of trafficking looks a little bit different, right? So anywhere that there's humans, there's trafficking. Every country, maybe Antarctica doesn't. I don't know. Um, I haven't been there yet to find out, but anywhere that there's people, there's trafficking. There's trafficking in Iceland. Like there's trafficking everywhere. It looks very different everywhere in the world. So in a lot of places in Africa, we see sex trafficking. We see a lot of labor trafficking. We see human sacrifice, like the sacrifice of children. That actually does happen. We have seen that. Organ harvesting. In places more in Asia, you're going to see a lot of sex trafficking, a lot of forced marriage. See some of that in the Middle East as well. A lot of labor trafficking as well in Asia, in South America, South and Central America, especially in the Caribbean, in like the Dominican Republic. We see a lot of sex trafficking because it's so easy for Americans to get down there. Um, and again, generally, the people that want to engage. So we have the trafficker, the trafficking victim, and then the John, for lack of a better word. Um, Sorry if the J stands for John. I don't know in your name, but uh, does it? Why are you laughing? It does. I'm so sorry. That's so good. So we have the trafficker, the trafficking victim, and the John. Sorry about that, but that's so funny. The Johns are generally not having the victims come to them in a different country, right? They are going to that country, say the Dominican Republic. Americans going down to the Dominican Republic for a vacation. They probably will have the trafficking victim come to their hotel, but they're not having them come to the United States. They're going to go to that country. It's also, you probably heard the word sex tourism, which is essentially going to another country to abuse a child, right? Or an adult. Like some countries have legal prostitution, which is a whole nother conversation, whether prostitution should be legal or not. But people will go to these countries, especially ones that are close to developing nations. That's where you generally see the most instances of sex trafficking, is the countries that are near or bordering developed nations, right? So for us, Dominican Republic, a lot of people from America like to go down there. A lot of Germans too. We find a lot of Germans in the Dominican Republic. Haven't figured out the connection there yet, but for whatever reason there is. So you'll kind of see that, right? You see Europeans in Africa. So we'll see the sex trafficking tends to border more of developed nations. Not 100%. There's sex trafficking everywhere in the world, but the higher instances of it we're seeing in developed nations, especially when it's Westerners abusing them, Westerners coming in. But trafficking victims are abused by their own people as well. Like we work in a lot of countries in Africa and in South and Central America. The locals are also abusing these children. It's not just foreigners. It's not just Americans or Europeans or Australians or whoever going to these countries. The locals are abusing them as well. So it's hard to say if there's any one place. I know Thailand has gotten a lot of attention over the years. Thailand and Nepal are two of the main countries that get a lot of attention for sex trafficking. And fortunately, a lot of organizations have stepped up and are really engaged in those areas. So it really just kind of ebbs and flows with whatever's popular at the time, whatever country people are traveling to. And then kind of bordering developing nations for sex trafficking. When it comes to labor trafficking and more of that side of things, we see that a lot in Africa and Asia. But it's just trafficking just looks very different in every country.
Real quick question before we wrap up here.
Sure.
For somebody that like might just be, I'd say everyday person, but just like an average person, what are some signs that they can recognize that somebody or something might be a sex trafficking situation?
That's a great question. So there's like we all are familiar with the massage parlors, especially small town Pennsylvania. There's probably one near you. Ohio, I assume the same. Um, there, if it seems fishy, it probably is. So like I bring up um, massage parlors because they're generally in every community. A lot of those that are not like Massage Envy or whatever that one big chain is, I doubt they're doing it. But like your CD ones that seem to be open 24/7, stuff like that. If you're guessing it's probably something unusual, it probably is. So situations like that, we have trafficking here in the States in a lot of service industries. So restaurants, agriculture, that's real. If you see individuals that are being transported together, their communication is being controlled. They all live in, we've even gotten tips like this where, hey, there's this many individuals of this ethnicity living in, there's 12 individuals of this ethnicity living in one trailer and they're all going to work at this same restaurant every single day in the same van. They're not allowed to talk to anybody. They all work in the back. Those are signs and symptoms of controlled communication, controlled movement. Probably don't have access to their documents. Now that's for foreigners that are being brought in to be trafficked here. Generally, we'll see them in massage parlors, restaurants, agriculture, places like that. So when you see groups of ethnically similar individuals, that their communication and their transportation and livelihood is completely controlled by another individual, that's a pretty big red flag for trafficking, that something is wrong. No, that's with our foreign individuals. When it comes to individuals that you might encounter, whether it's at school, in your workplace, just on the streets that are Americans that are here, born here, ethnically American, whatever it is, um, it's harder. The red flags aren't that blatant. It's a lot more difficult to assess that. And it's really where these community seminars that I was talking about earlier, they come into play, where you really have to, like, humanity is the only thing that's going to save us in those situations. So actual human connection and talking to individuals and, understanding, especially when it comes to like a school setting or a work setting where individuals might say things or suddenly have certain things, like a very young teenager having brand new cell phones and jewelry and makeup all the time, and you know that they come from a family that's not something that's financially feasible for them, because traffickers are grooming them. They're going to be giving them gifts. Grooming is, a lot of nice compliments and isolation. It's also gift giving. That's a huge thing as well. So it's very difficult. And like I said, traffickers want to fly under the radar. They don't want to advertise these things publicly. So it's very challenging to see these red flags, because when it comes to sex trafficking, especially of individuals that are already within that community, it's very difficult. But the usual, emotional changes, withdrawing from their community, isolation from family and friends, suddenly they have things that they wouldn't normally have. They're hanging out. And it's some of this stuff just sounds like you got in a new toxic relationship, right? So it's very difficult to balance out what's that and what's trafficking. So, but having conversations and not being afraid to kind of upset people's feelings, like, hey, you've been dating this new guy, if they're an adult or whatever, you've been dating this new guy and it seems like he's the only person you ever want to hang out with, and like you've changed a bit. And having those hard conversations with your friends might cause problems, sure. But wouldn't you rather have that conversation and be wrong than not have that conversation and be right that they were being trafficked? So we don't generally train to red flags when we do trainings, because I never want someone to hyper fixate on, if this is there, it's definitely trafficking, and if it's not, it's definitely not, because it is such a changing field constantly that it's very difficult to say 100% if they're wearing red shoes, they're being trafficked. Like, it's just not always possible. So the open lines of communication are really the way that it's going to benefit you, and just knowing what's going on in your community, noticing things, that paying attention, kind of getting in each other's business. We've become a very isolationist society where, like, everyone, your own truth and mind your own business and stay out of other people's business. That's how we've lost the village aspect of society, right? So it's not to say, be a Karen and be up in everyone's business all the damn time, but you do want to have a level where you are engaging with individuals and you are kind of in their business, right? We can't, if we want to fix society, we also have to accept that that's going to come with some uncomfortable conversations and going back to that village mindset, if that makes sense.
Nope. I keep getting myself stuck on mute. Sorry.
As I say, I think you're both
Um,
still muted.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't. So that was a real quick hour that went by. There's still a lot to talk about, and it is a hard subject to discuss. So anyone watching, if we're smiling or there's laughing about something. It's not about the trafficking itself. It's just we have dark senses of humor sometimes. Um, why don't you go ahead, promote what you got, websites, things coming up, anything like that, and then we'll go ahead and we'll close it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw that we have the banner going across, so our website is up there. It's lanternrescue.org. We're on I think pretty much every major social media platform, just under Lantern Rescue. Like I mentioned earlier, we have that prison project coming up. So that is launching, I think, tomorrow, actually. So you'll actually get to see some footage of that. If you watch, you might see someone that looks familiar pretending to be an inmate. It's me. Um, so we'll have that coming up, and that's a great way to get in and support a project that's brand new. I'm very excited to see how that goes. Other than that, keep up with us on social media. We have our Liberators team. If anyone wants to join that, it's a recurring monthly donation, but you get extra special texts when rescues are happening in real time. So there's a lot of ways to stay connected with us. And you can get on our website and see how to contact us if anyone has any follow-on questions or anything like that. It's been awesome to be on here with you guys. I really appreciate it. I know it's a little different than normal, but I will say my dad is like the biggest Bigfoot fan ever. So we could probably even have a longer conversation about that kind of stuff sometime. So I think he might actually be Bigfoot. That's unconfirmed. But so no, I really appreciate you guys having us on here and taking time to talk about human trafficking. It's not a fun topic to talk about. I get that, but it's so important to get the knowledge out there so that people can protect themselves and help others that are in those situations.
Yeah, I think it's important that everybody be involved in some way. Like you said, like the community, we've lost that and it needs to be brought back. And maybe the best first step is everybody should be informed that this is happening. Like, it's not just something you see on movies or like something in Mexico, like CD Underground or something like that. Like this is probably could be happening in your neighborhood.
Mhm.
So appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody check out these links, do your research, learn a little bit about it so that we're all informed. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.